rain hammered against the marble lobby like 1,000 angry fists. Marcus stood in the center of the Grand Celestial Hotel's gleaming entrance, water pooling at his feet, his threadbare coat clinging to his shoulders like a second skin of shame. His eyes, dark, tired, older than his 43 years, stared at the man in the crisp navy suit who was pointing toward the revolving door with disgust written across his pale face. Out now. Marcus didn't move. Not because he was stubborn. Not because he wanted a scene. But because something in him had broken open that night. Something that had been sealed for so long he'd forgotten it was there. The kind of breaking that doesn't shatter, it releases. "I have a reservation," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. The manager, Gerald Pemberton, according to the gold nameplate pinned to his chest, laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a man who'd spent his entire career sorting people into categories, those who mattered and those who didn't. "A reservation," Gerald repeated, his tone dripping with mockery. "Sir, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is the Grand Celestial. We don't accommodate ... You're kind here." The words hung in the air like smoke. Around them, guests in designer clothes and diamond watches paused mid-stride, their eyes flicking between Marcus and Gerald with that particular mixture of curiosity and cruelty that only the comfortable can afford. A woman in a fur stole whispered something to her companion. A businessman smirked behind his phone. Marcus felt it then, the weight of every assumption, every sideways glance, every time someone had looked at him and decided they knew his story before he'd spoken a single word. Stay with me, because what happens next will strip away everything you think you know about power, pride, and the price of forgetting where you came from. 3 security guards approached, their hands already reaching for Marcus's arms. And in that moment, standing in a lobby that cost more per night than most people earned in a month, Marcus made a decision that would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone in that hotel. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He simply reached into his coat, the one Gerald had sneered at, and pulled out a phone. Not the cracked burner phone of someone down on their luck. A phone that cost more than Gerald's monthly salary. A phone with a single contact saved under one name. Legal. "This is Marcus Thorne," he said into the phone, his voice calm as deep water. "I'm standing in the lobby of the Grand Celestial in Manhattan. I need you to pull the ownership documents for the Celestial Hotel Group, all 247 properties. I want them on my screen in the next 60 seconds. Gerald's face flickered, just for a moment, from certainty to confusion. "Sir, I don't know what kind of fantasy you're..." Marcus raised a hand, not aggressive, not dismissive, just commanding. The kind of gesture that comes from years of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. The rain still dripped from his coat. His shoes, worn leather, barely holding together, squeaked against the polished floor. But something in his posture had shifted. The phone buzzed. Marcus turned the screen toward Gerald. The document that appeared was corporate legal language, dense and technical. The 3 words were highlighted in bold at the top. Sole proprietor, Marcus Thorne. Gerald's face went white. Not pale, white. The color of someone who just watched their entire world collapse into a sinkhole. That's impossible," Gerald stammered, his eyes darting between the screen and Marcus's face. "Mr. Thorne is the company profile picture shows. A white man in a suit," Marcus finished, his voice soft. "Yeah, that's my coup, David. Nice guy. Takes a good headshot. But he doesn't own a damn thing." The lobby had gone silent. Absolutely silent. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. The woman in the fur stole had stopped whispering. The businessman had lowered his phone. Even the rain seemed to pause, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Marcus took a step forward. Gerald took a step back. "You know what the funny thing is, Gerald?" Marcus said, and for the first time, something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Not anger, something colder. something that had been forged in rooms where men like Gerald would never be invited. I built this empire specifically for nights like tonight. I built it so that people who look like me, who talk like me, who come from where I come from, would have a place they could walk into and be treated like they mattered. Not because of what they were wearing or how much money was in their pocket, but because they were human. He gestured around the lobby, at the gold fixtures and crystal chandeliers and imported marble. I bought this chain 15 years ago. It was failing, hemorrhaging money. Everyone said I was crazy. A black kid from Detroit who grew up in a one-bedroom apartment with his mother and 3 siblings, trying to play in the big leagues. His voice dropped. But I knew something they didn't. I knew that the future of luxury wasn't about exclusion. It was about elevation. It was about making people feel seen. Gerald opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. "So I'm going to ask you one question, Gerald," Marcus continued, his eyes never leaving the manager's face. "And I want you to think very carefully before you answer. When you looked at me tonight, when you decided I didn't belong here, what exactly did you see?" The question hung in the air like a blade. "And if you think this is just about one manager's mistake, stay with me, because this is about every door that's ever been closed, every assumption that's ever been made, and the moment when everything changes." Gerald's mouth worked soundlessly. Sweat had appeared on his forehead despite the air conditioning. The security guards had frozen mid-step, their hands dropping away from Marcus like he'd suddenly become electrified. I didn't. I mean, double quotes, Gerald's words tumbled over each other, desperate and incoherent. Marcus waited, patient, unmovable as a mountain. I saw ... Gerald swallowed hard. "I saw someone who ... who didn't fit, Marcus repeated softly. Interesting choice of words. He turned then, slowly, taking in the entire lobby. Every guest, every employee, every person who'd watched this scene unfold with varying degrees of interest and judgment. "I didn't call legal to fire you, Gerald," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the space. "I called them because I wanted you to understand something. I wanted everyone here to understand something." He pulled off his wet coat, revealing a simple black sweater underneath. No logos, no labels, just fabric and the man beneath it. Power isn't about what you wear or how you look or whether you fit someone else's idea of what success should be. Power is about what you build, who you lift, the choices you make when you think nobody's watching. His eyes found Gerald again. "You failed tonight. Not because you didn't recognize me. That's just ignorance, and ignorance can be fixed. You failed because you saw a human being in need and decided they didn't deserve dignity." The words hit like hammer blows, clean, precise, devastating. Marcus reached into his pocket again and pulled out a key card, the kind given to VIP guests. He walked to the front desk, the staff parting before him like water, and placed it gently on the marble counter. "I'd like to check in now," he said quietly. "Presidential suite. I believe it's been reserved under my name for the past 3 nights." The young woman behind the desk, her nameplate read Jennifer, took the card with shaking hands. Her eyes were wide, her face a mixture of horror and confusion. "Mr. Thorne, we had no idea." The reservation was flagged as she glanced at Gerald, her expression hardening. It was flagged as suspicious. "Suspicious," Marcus repeated, and something ancient and exhausted flickered across his face. "Yeah, I bet it was." The presidential suite on the 47th floor was exactly as Marcus remembered it. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, rain streaking the glass like tears. A white marble bathroom bigger than his childhood living room. A bed that could sleep 4 people comfortably. Everything pristine. Everything perfect. Everything hollow. Marcus stood at the window, his reflection ghostly against the city lights, and felt the exhaustion settle into his bones like sediment at the bottom of a riverbed. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not tonight. Not like this. He'd flown in from Singapore 30 hours of meetings with hotel developers, investors, people whose wealth made even his portfolio look modest. He'd been running on coffee and adrenaline for 3 days straight. When his flight landed at JFK, his assistant had texted, "Driver sick. Car service delayed 3 hours. Sorry, boss." Marcus had stood outside the terminal, watching taxis splash through puddles, and made a choice. A stupid choice, maybe, but one that felt necessary in a way he couldn't quite articulate. He'd left his luggage with a porter, pulled on an old coat he kept for nostalgic reasons, the one he'd worn the first day he'd arrived in New York 20 years ago, with $300 and a dream, and walked. Just walked. Through neighborhoods that smelled like his childhood, past bodegas with flickering neon signs, along streets where men huddled in doorways against the rain, their faces illuminated by phone screens and cigarettes. He'd walked because sometimes the only way to remember who you are is to go back to the places where you first learned you were someone worth becoming. By the time he reached the Grand Celestial, he was soaked, exhausted, wearing a coat that looked like it had survived a war. And Gerald Pemberton had taken one look at him and seen, what? A threat? A problem? Someone who didn't fit the carefully curated image of luxury? Marcus pressed his palm against the cold glass and closed his eyes. The truth was, he'd been testing his own company. Not consciously, not with some grand plan to expose prejudice and teach lessons, but testing it nonetheless. Every few months, he'd do this. Walk into one of his properties looking like anyone other than Marcus Thorne, CEO. Sometimes he'd be recognized. Sometimes he wouldn't. And sometimes, nights like tonight, he'd be reminded exactly why he'd built this empire in the first place. His phone buzzed. Text from his Q, David. News travels fast. Legal said you had an incident at the Celestial. You good? Marcus typed back. Define good. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Want me to handle it? Marcus stared at the message. David was good at handling things, firing people, issuing statements, making problems disappear with the efficiency of someone who'd never had to think twice about walking into a room and being seen as exactly who was. No, Marcus replied. I'll handle it. He needed to shower, to sleep, to stop feeling like his skin was vibrating with a rage he'd learned to bury so deep it had become part of his foundation. But instead, he opened his laptop and pulled up the employee file for Gerald Pemberton. Age, 52. Employed with Celestial Hotel Group for 7 years. Previous positions at 4 other luxury chains. Excellent performance reviews. Multiple commendations for upholding company standards and maintaining property prestige. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. Maintaining property prestige. That phrase. It appeared in Gerald's file 9 times. And every time, Marcus felt something twist in his chest because he knew exactly what it meant. He'd heard variations of it his entire career. Maintaining standards. Protecting the brand. Ensuring our guests feel comfortable. All code. All the same song, different verses. He clicked deeper into the file. Gerald had denied entry or service to 17 guests in the past year alone. The reasons were always technically justifiable. Dress code violation, inability to provide valid payment, suspicious behavior. But when Marcus cross-referenced the incident reports with the guest names, a pattern emerged that made his jaw tighten. 12 of those 17 guests had distinctly Black, Latino, or Middle Eastern names. Marcus closed the laptop harder than necessary. Drop a comment if you've ever been judged before you even opened your mouth, because tonight's story is for everyone who's ever been invisible. He stood and walked to the bathroom, turning on the shower until steam filled the space. He stripped off his wet clothes, letting them fall in a heap on the marble floor. The water was scalding, exactly how he needed it. He stood under the spray and let it burn. People thought wealth solved everything. That money was a shield, an armor that protected you from the small cruelties of the world. And maybe it did in some ways. Marcus could buy anything, go anywhere, make phone calls that moved markets. But he couldn't buy his way out of his skin. He couldn't buy his way out of the look in Gerald's eyes, that particular cocktail of contempt and fear that appeared when someone decided you were dangerous simply for existing in a space they believed belonged to them. The thing about being a black CEO, a black billionaire, was that you existed in a constant state of translation. Every room you entered, you had to prove yourself twice, 3 times. You had to be sharper, faster, more prepared than anyone else, because the moment you faltered, the moment you showed even a flicker of uncertainty, someone would be there to say, "See? I knew he didn't belong." Marcus had spent 20 years proving he belonged, building companies, making investments that turned millions into billions, employing thousands of people, donating to charities, funding scholarships, speaking at conferences where he was often the only black face on the stage. And still, a man in a hotel lobby could look at him and see nothing but someone to be removed. He turned off the shower and stood dripping on the heated tile floor, his reflection staring back at him from the foggy mirror. He looked old suddenly, the lines around his eyes deeper, the gray creeping into his temple more pronounced. 43. He was 43 years old. He'd built an empire, changed industries, made his mother cry tears of pride the day he bought her a house in the suburbs of Detroit, far from the one-bedroom apartment where they'd stretched every meal and prayed the heat wouldn't get shut off in winter. But tonight, in a lobby he owned, wearing clothes that didn't matter, he'd been nothing. And that was the part that burned. Not the humiliation, not even the anger, but the exhaustion, the soul-deep tiredness of having to be on all the time, of never being able to just be. Marcus dried off and pulled on a hotel row plush, white, monogrammed with the celestial logo he'd designed himself. He walked back to the window and stared out at the city. Somewhere down there, Gerald Pemberton was probably panicking, making calls, trying to figure out how to save his career. Maybe crying to his wife about the black man in the wet coat who turned out to be his boss. Marcus felt nothing about that. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just tired. His phone buzzed again. This time, a call. His mother's face appeared on the screen. A photo from last Christmas, her smile wide and genuine. He answered. "Baby," she said, her voice warm and worried in the way only mothers can be. "David called me. Said you had a rough night." Marcus closed his eyes. "Mama, I told David not to." "Don't mama me," she interrupted, her tone shifting to that familiar steel. "You think I don't know when something's wrong?" "I felt it in my spirit 2 hours ago. Started praying right there in the kitchen." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. "Your spirit, huh?" "My spirit," she confirmed. "Now tell me what happened." So he did. All of it. Gerald. The lobby. The looks. The exhaustion that had nothing to do with jet lag and everything to do with being alive in a world that saw him as a threat before it saw him as a person. His mother listened, didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes or easy comfort. She'd lived too long, seen too much, to pretend this was something that could be fixed with a hug and a home-cooked meal. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You remember when you were 7? She finally said. "You came home from school crying because a teacher told you that boys like you didn't become astronauts?" Marcus did remember. Mrs. Hendricks, 2nd grade. He'd shown her his drawing of himself in a spacesuit, standing on Mars. She'd patted his head and said, kindly but firmly, that he should focus on more realistic goals. "I remember," he said quietly. "You know what you told me that night?" His mother's voice was soft now, aching. "You said, 'Mama, I'm gonna prove her wrong. I'm gonna go so high she'll need a telescope to see me.'" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "And you did, baby. You went so high. But here's what I need you to understand." She paused. Going high doesn't mean you stop feeling the ground beneath your feet. It doesn't mean you forget what it's like to be small. And it sure as hell doesn't mean you let people like that manager make you doubt, even for a second, what you've built. I'm not doubting. Yes, you are, she interrupted gently. I can hear it in your voice. You're wondering if it was worth it. All the work, all the sacrifice. If it even matters when one man in one lobby can make you feel like nothing. She was right. God, she was right. So what do I do? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. You do what you always do, his mother said firmly. You make it matter. You turn this into something that changes things. You don't just fire that manager and move on. You look at your whole company, every hotel, every policy, every person you've hired, and you make sure this never happens again. Follow for what happens next, because this isn't just one night. This is the beginning of something that will shake an entire industry. Marcus nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Yeah, okay. And Marcus? Yes, Mama? You're allowed to be hurt. You're allowed to be angry. Don't bury it. Feel it. And then use it. They talked for a few more minutes about nothing and everything, the way they always did. His younger sister's new job. His brother's kids. The leaky faucet in the kitchen she kept forgetting to call a plumber about. Normal things. Human things. When they hung up, Marcus felt steadier. Not fixed, but steadier. He opened his laptop again and pulled up a blank document. Typed 4 words at the top. Celestial Hospitality Initiative, and then he started writing. Dawn broke over Manhattan like a wound pink and raw and beautiful. Marcus hadn't slept. He'd spent the entire night at his laptop, coffee cooling beside him in a porcelain cup he never drank from, building something that felt more like architecture than business strategy. The Celestial Hospitality Initiative. It wasn't just a training program or a PR move. It was a complete overhaul of how his hotels operated. New hiring practices that prioritized diversity, not as a quota, but as a philosophy. Unconscious bias training that actually meant something, taught by people who'd lived the consequences of bias. Not consultants reading from PowerPoints. A guest advocate system where anyone who felt discriminated against could report directly to corporate, bypassing management entirely. And most importantly, a zero-tolerance policy. One strike. One instance of treating a guest as less than because of how they looked, where they came from, or what they were wearing. One strike and you were gone. Marcus knew it would be controversial. He knew there'd be pushback from investors who cared more about stock prices than principles, from managers who'd spent careers maintaining standards, from guests who liked their luxury served with a side of exclusivity. He didn't care. At 6:47 a.m., he sent the 53-page document to David Legal and his entire executive team with a subject line that was just 2 words: effective immediately. His phone started ringing 30 seconds later. David's voice was cautious when Marcus answered. Boss, you've been up all night, haven't you? Is that a question or a diagnosis? Both. A pause. I read the proposal. It's ambitious. Ambitious, Marcus repeated flatly. That's corporate for, are you out of your damn mind? No, David said quickly. No, it's corporate for, this is going to cost a fortune and piss off half our board. But it's also the right thing to do, and I'm in. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. David was good people. One of the few executives he'd inherited when he bought the Celestial chain, who'd actually understood what Marcus was trying to build. A white man from Connecticut who'd grown up with every advantage and somehow still managed to get it to understand that luxury didn't have to mean exclusion, that excellence didn't require homogeneity. How much pushback are we looking at? Marcus asked. On a scale of 1 to 10? 12. David's tone shifted to something more serious. But here's the thing, you own 68% of the company. Unless the board wants to stage a coup, they'll fall in line. The question is, are you ready for the media circus? Marcus walked to the window. The city was waking up below him, delivery trucks and early commuters and street vendors setting up carts. Life continuing, indifferent to the small revolutions happening in hotel suites and boardrooms. "Let it come," Marcus said quietly. "I'm tired of being quiet." They talked logistics for another 20 minutes. Timeline for implementation. Which properties to start with. How to handle the inevitable lawsuits from employees who'd be terminated under the new policy. When they hung up, Marcus finally allowed himself to feel it. Fear. Not fear of failure. He'd failed before. Built companies that crashed. Made investments that tanked. Lost money and time and pieces of himself along the way. That kind of fear was familiar. Almost comfortable. This was different. This was the fear of being visible. Of stepping out from behind the carefully constructed image of Marcus Thorne, successful CEO, and showing the world Marcus Thorne, black man who'd been hurt and was done pretending it didn't matter. There was a knock at the door. Marcus checked the time, 7:15 a.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door to find Jennifer, the front desk attendant from last night, holding a silver tray with breakfast. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. "Mr. Thorne, her voice cracked. "I wanted to bring this myself, to apologize. For last night, for not saying anything when Mr. Pemberton ... double quote. She couldn't finish. Marcus stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated, then entered, setting the tray on the coffee table with shaking hands. Marcus gestured to the chair across from him, and she sat, perched on the edge like she might need to run. "How long have you worked here?" Marcus asked gently. 3 years, she whispered. "I have seen Mr. Pemberton do this before. Turn people away. And I just ... double quotes. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I needed this job. I have student loans and my mom's medical bills, and I kept telling myself it wasn't my place to say anything. But last night, watching him treat you like that, I realized I've been complicit. I've been part of the problem." Marcus leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "Tell me about the others." The people. Gerald turned away. Jennifer's hands twisted in her lap. "There was a family last month. Black family from Atlanta. They had a reservation, paid in full, but Gerald said their IDs looked suspicious. Made them wait in the lobby for 2 hours while he verified their information. They ended up leaving." Her voice dropped. "The father was crying. His little girl asked him why the man was being so mean. I heard it. I heard everything. And I just ... stood there. And before that, a woman. Mexican, I think. Or maybe Central American. Her English wasn't perfect, but she had a reservation too. Gerald told her we were overbooked, which was a lie. I could see it on the system. We had 12 empty rooms." Jennifer looked up, her eyes meeting Marcus's. "He does this maybe once a month, sometimes more. Always has a reason. Always technically justifiable. But it's never white guests. Never." Marcus felt the anger return, cold and precise as a scalpel. "You said you were complicit," he said slowly. "But you weren't. You were scared. There's a difference." "Is there?" Jennifer's voice was bitter. "I kept quiet because keeping quiet was easier. Because my job mattered more than doing what was right. That's not being scared. That's being a coward." Drop a comment if you've ever stayed silent when you should have spoken, because this is about more than one night. This is about all of us. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and opened the document he'd sent to his executive team. He handed it to Jennifer. "Read the first page," he said. She took the phone with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the words. As she read, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like hope. "You single quotes read ... You're really doing this?" she whispered. "I'm really doing this. But the board ... the investors, people are going to..." "Let them," Marcus interrupted. "I've spent my entire career worrying about what people think. About being respectable enough, quiet enough, palatable enough to succeed in rooms where people like me weren't supposed to exist. I'm done with that. He stood and walked to the window again, his back to her. My mother used to clean hotel rooms, he said quietly. Did you know that? Jennifer shook her head. 5 hotels, 6 days a week. She'd come home with her back aching and her hands raw from chemicals, and she'd still make dinner for me and my siblings, still help us with homework, still find a way to smile. His reflection in the window looked ghostly, insubstantial. And you know what I remember most? The way she'd talk about the guests. Not with bitterness, with ... wonder, like they were from another planet. People who could afford to pay more for one night than she made in a month. People who never looked at her. Who left their rooms trashed like the person cleaning up after them wasn't human. He turned back to Jennifer. She died 8 years ago. Heart attack. She was 56. I've spent every day since wondering if things would have been different if she hadn't spent her entire life breaking herself for people who didn't even see her. Jennifer was crying openly now. I don't want anyone to be invisible in my hotels, Marcus continued. Not the guests, not the staff, not the person walking through the door in a wet coat because they're tired and just want a place to rest. That's what this initiative is about. It's about making people see. He walked over and took his phone back gently. You're not a coward, Jennifer. You're human. We all are. We all make choices we regret. The question is, what do we do next? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What can I do? You can tell the truth. When legal interviews staff about Gerald's conduct, you tell them everything you just told me. Every incident. Every time you saw something wrong and didn't speak up. All of it. Okay. Her voice was stronger now. Okay, I will. And Jennifer? Yes? Thank you. For the breakfast. For the honesty. For being willing to be uncomfortable. She nodded and stood, moving toward the door. Before she left, she turned back. Mr. Thorne? For what it's worth, my mom cleaned hotel rooms too. I know what you're building here matters. When she left, Marcus sat back down and finally took a sip of the coffee she'd brought. It was cold, bitter, perfect. His phone buzzed with a flood of responses from the executive team. Some supportive, some cautiously optimistic. Some veiled warnings about the financial and reputational risks. He ignored all of them and pulled up a new email. Typed Gerald Pemberton's address at the top. Then he started writing. Gerald, by the time you read this, you'll already know that I'm Marcus Thorne. You'll know that I own this hotel, this chain, the company you've worked for over the past 7 years. You'll probably be panicking, wondering if you're fired, wondering if I'm vindictive enough to ruin your career, make an example of you, turn you into a cautionary tale about prejudice and power. I could do that. I have the resources, the legal team, the platform. I could make sure your name becomes synonymous with everything ugly about the hospitality industry. But I'm not going to do that. Do you know why? Because this isn't about you. You're not special, Gerald. You're not uniquely evil or particularly malicious. You're just ... average. Average in the way so many people are average, comfortable with your assumptions, confident in your judgments, certain that your worldview is the correct one. You looked at me last night and saw a problem to be solved. A disruption to the order you've spent your career maintaining. You didn't see a human being. You didn't see someone who might be exhausted, vulnerable, in need of the basic dignity that every person deserves, regardless of how they look or what they're wearing. And that's the part that breaks my heart. Not because you hurt me, though you did. Not because you embarrassed me, though you did. But because you represent something so much bigger than one night in one lobby. You represent a system that's been broken for so long we've forgotten it was ever supposed to work differently. So here's what's going to happen. You're not fired. Not yet. Instead, you're going to participate in a new program I'm implementing across all Celestial properties. You're going to spend the next 6 months learning what it means to actually serve people, all people. You're going to shadow staff members who come from different backgrounds than you. You're going to listen to guests tell stories about times they've been made to feel unwelcome. You're going to sit in rooms where your comfort doesn't matter and your voice isn't the loudest. And if you can do that, if you can genuinely engage with this process, examine your biases, and demonstrate real growth, then maybe you'll get to keep your job. But if you can't, if you refuse to see what you did wrong, if you decide that I'm just being sensitive or political or whatever other word you might use to avoid accountability, then you're gone, and I won't lose a moment of sleep over it. This isn't mercy, Gerald. It's strategy. Because the only way to change a system is to change the people within it. And sometimes people can change. Not always. Maybe not even most of the time. But sometimes I'm giving you that chance. Don't waste it. Marcus Thorne. Marcus read the email 3 times before sending it. Each time, he felt the urge to delete it, to write something harsher, something that would feel more like justice. But his mother's voice echoed in his head. You make it matter. This mattered more than rage, more than revenge. He hit send. Within 2 minutes, his phone rang. David again. Did you just send Gerald Pemberton an email about a redemption arc? David's tone was somewhere between disbelief and admiration. Something like that. Boss, you know he's going to leak this, right? To the press. To anyone who'll listen. He's going to make himself the victim. Let him try. Marcus's voice was steel. I've got 17 documented incidents of discriminatory behavior on his watch. I've got staff testimony. I've got data. If he wants to go war, I'm ready. Jesus. David exhaled slowly. You really are done being quiet. I really am. They discussed logistics again, rolling out the initiative. Handling PR. Preparing for the board meeting next week where Marcus would present his plan and dare anyone to challenge him. When they hung up, Marcus finally allowed himself to eat the breakfast Jennifer had brought. Eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, coffee that had long since gone cold. But he drank anyway because throwing it away felt wasteful. And some habits from childhood never leave you. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Gerald. I don't understand why you're doing this. I was just doing my job. Marcus stared at the message for a long time, felt the anger rise again, hot and familiar. He typed back, that's the problem. You think treating people like that is your job. It's not. It never was. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then vanished completely. No response came. Marcus set his phone down and walked to the bathroom, finally allowing himself to really look at his reflection. The exhaustion was written in every line of his face, but beneath it, something else. Something he hadn't seen in a long time. Purpose. He built an empire because he wanted to prove he could, because he wanted his mother to be proud, because he wanted to look at that second-grade teacher who told him to have realistic goals and say, look at me now. But maybe that wasn't enough anymore. Maybe success wasn't just about building. Maybe it was about protecting. Creating spaces where people didn't have to spend their entire lives proving they deserved to exist in them. His phone buzzed again. This time, a call from a number he recognized. His younger sister, Jasmine. You made the news, were the first words out of her mouth. Marcus closed his eyes. That was fast. Someone leaked it to a hospitality blog. Black CEO confronts racist manager at his own hotel. It's already got like 50,000 shares. Jasmine paused. Marcus, they're calling you a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just tired. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Her voice softened. How you holding up? Marcus sat on the edge of the bathtub, suddenly aware of how much his body ached. Honestly, I don't know. I spent all night writing this massive reform proposal for the company. Sent it out this morning. And now I'm just waiting. For the backlash. For the board to lose their minds. For investors to start pulling out. And if they do, then they do. He said it with more conviction than he felt. I'm not backing down on this, Jazz. Not this time." His sister was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried that particular blend of pride and worry that only siblings can master. "You remember when we were kids and Marcus Washington stole your bike?" Marcus smiled despite himself. "You mean when you chased him down the block with a baseball bat? I was 12 and feral." She laughed. "But my point is, you told me afterwards that violence wasn't the answer, that we had to be better, smarter. You made me give the bat back to Dad and apologize to Mom for scaring the neighbors." "You did scare them. Mrs. Chun wouldn't look at us for a month." "Listen to me," Jasmine interrupted, her tone serious now. "You've spent your whole life being better, being smarter, being the respectful, responsible one. And that's good. That's how you build everything you have. But maybe it's okay to be a little feral sometimes too. Maybe it's okay to chase people down with a metaphorical baseball bat when they deserve it." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You were just too busy being a corporate robot to notice." They talked for another half hour about her graphic design business, about their brother's divorce proceedings, about their mother's friend who kept trying to set Marcus up with her daughter. Normal sibling stuff. The kind of conversation that reminded Marcus that beneath the CEO title and the billions and the empire he'd built, he was still just a man from Detroit with a family that loved him and a past that shaped him. When they hung up, Marcus finally showered properly, letting the hot water wash away the remnants of last night. He dressed in clothes from his emergency suitcase, the one he kept in every major city for unexpected stays. Dark jeans, a simple gray Henley leather jacket. He looked at himself in the mirror one more time. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just Marcus. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. At 10:47 a.m., he took the elevator down to the lobby. The space had transformed since last night. Or maybe Marcus had transformed, and that changed everything else. The marble floors gleamed. Morning light streamed through the windows. Guests moved through the space with that particular Manhattan efficiency. Phones out, coffee in hand, places to be. Jennifer was at the front desk. When she saw Marcus, her eyes widened, but she managed a small, genuine smile. Gerald was nowhere to be seen. Marcus approached the desk slowly. Every eye in the lobby tracked him, some with curiosity, some with recognition, some with that particular wariness that came from seeing someone who didn't fit their expectations of what power should look like. "Mr. Thorne," Jennifer said quietly, "can I help you with anything?" "Actually, I need to speak with your manager." Her face paled. "Mr. Pemberton called in sick today. There's an assistant manager." "I know. I'd like to speak with them." 5 minutes later, Marcus sat in the hotel's private conference room across from a young woman named Keisha Mitchell. Late 20s, sharp suit. Eyes that assessed him with the kind of intelligence that couldn't be taught. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice professional but warm. "I have to say, this is unexpected. When they told me the owner wanted to meet, I thought ... will quote she trailed off, clearly uncertain how much honesty was appropriate. "You thought I'd be white," Marcus finished for her. A flicker of surprise crossed her face. Then something else, recognition, understanding. "Yes, sir, I did." "Why?" Keisha hesitated. Marcus could see her weighing options, calculating risks. Then something in her expression shifted, a decision made. "Because in my experience, black people don't own hotels like this. We work in them, we clean them, we manage them if we're lucky, but we don't own them." She met his eyes directly. "And when we do? We don't usually show up unannounced in casual clothes asking to speak with staff. We send lawyers, consultants, people who look more ... traditional." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about yourself, Keisha." "Sir?" "Where you're from, how you ended up here, what you want." She blinked, clearly thrown by the question. I'm from Brooklyn, Crown Heights. My grandmother raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. She cleaned houses to put me through school. I got a scholarship to Cornell's hospitality program, graduated top of my class, and ... double quote she paused. And I've been an assistant manager here for 3 years. Passed over for promotion twice despite excellent reviews. Do you know why? Kaisha's jaw tightened. I have theories. Share them. Mr. Thorne, with all due respect. No. Marcus leaned forward. No respect. No corporate diplomacy. Just honesty. Why do you think you haven't been promoted? She held his gaze for a long moment. Then, because Gerald Pemberton doesn't think women who look like me should be running luxury hotels. He's never said it explicitly, but he doesn't have to. It's in every not yet. Every you need more experience. Every time he promotes someone else with half my qualifications. Her voice dropped. I've been planning to leave. Was actually writing my resignation letter when they called me in here. If you've ever been told you're not ready when you know you're, drop a comment. This is your story too. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened a document. Slid it across the table to her. This is the Celestial Hospitality Initiative. I'm implementing it across all properties, starting with this one. Read Section 7. Kaisha picked up the phone, her eyes scanning rapidly. Marcus watched her face change as she read from confusion to disbelief to something that looked dangerously close to tears. This says ... double quotes. Her voice cracked. This says you're restructuring management. That every property will have a guest advocate. Someone who reports directly to corporate and has the authority to override discriminatory decisions. She looked up. You're dismantling the entire hierarchy. Not dismantling, rebuilding. With people who understand that hospitality means everyone. Marcus paused. I need someone to implement this program here. At the flagship property. Someone who knows the system from the inside. Someone who's experienced what it feels like to be overlooked. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a choice. You can take your resignation letter, walk out that door, and I'll write you a recommendation that'll get you hired anywhere in this city. Or you can stay. Help me build something that matters. Change this industry from the inside out. He met her eyes. But I need to be clear, if you stay, it won't be easy. There will be pushback. From staff, from guests, from people who like things the way they were. You'll be the face of this initiative at the property where I was humiliated less than 12 hours ago. That comes with pressure. Kaisha set the phone down carefully. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. What's the title? Director of Hospitality Excellence and Equity. You'll report directly to me and David Chun, my coup. You'll have full authority over hiring, training, and guest services. Salary starts at $180,000, plus bonuses tied to measurable diversity and satisfaction metrics. That's single quotes. double quotes. Kaisha pressed her lips together. That's more than Gerald makes. I know. She stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the city. Marcus let her think. This wasn't a decision to rush. After a long moment, Kaisha turned back. My grandmother used to tell me that the only thing worse than being invisible is finally being seen and not being ready for it. She smiled small, fierce. I'm ready, Mr. Thorne. When do I start? Tomorrow. Today, you go home, process everything, maybe celebrate. Tomorrow, we change the world. Or at least this corner of it. They shook hands. Kaisha's grip was firm, confident. When she left, Marcus sat alone in the conference room and felt something shift in his chest. Hope. It was small, fragile as new bone, but it was there. His phone buzzed. Email from legal. Gerald Pemberton has retained a lawyer. Claims wrongful termination and discrimination. Says you're running a reverse racism campaign. Wants $2 million settlement plus public apology. Marcus read the email twice. Then he laughed a real laugh, the kind that came from somewhere deep and genuine. He typed back, tell his lawyer we'll see him in court, and make sure every documented incident of his discriminatory behavior is ready for discovery. Let's see how that reverse racism claim holds up when a jury sees 17 cases of him turning away black and brown guests. He stood, straightened his jacket, and walked back into the lobby. This time, when people looked at him, he looked back. The boardroom on the 52nd floor of Celestial Corporate Headquarters was designed to intimidate. 20-foot ceilings. A table carved from a single piece of mahogany that probably cost more than most people's homes. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The view so spectacular it bordered on obscene. Marcus had designed it that way on purpose. He'd learned early in his career that power was as much about perception as reality, that sometimes you needed the room itself to remind people who held the cards. Today, he was grateful for that lesson. 10 board members sat around the table, their faces ranging from curious to hostile. Marcus recognized the expressions. He'd been reading them his entire professional life. The slight tightening around Gerald Whitmore's eyes, old money, railroad fortune. Hadn't worked a day in his life, but somehow convinced himself he'd earned everything. The calculated neutrality of Patricia Saul, venture capitalist, brilliant but ruthless, loyal only to returns. The barely concealed disdain of Richard Castellano, hospitality veteran, built his own chain before selling it for a fortune, still bitter that a kid from Detroit had surpassed him. David sat to Marcus's right, his usual calm presence a steadying force. To his left, legal had sent their top litigator, Michelle Okafor, a Nigerian immigrant who'd built her reputation destroying corporate bullies in court. "Let's get started," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the space with the kind of authority that didn't need to be loud. Patricia glanced at her watch, a gesture designed to convey impatience. "Marcus, we've all read your ... proposal. I think I speak for everyone when I say we're concerned." "Concerned," Marcus repeated. "That's diplomatic. Anyone want to be more specific?" Richard leaned forward, his thick hands clasped on the table. "What you're proposing will cost tens of millions in training, restructuring, and legal fees, plus the potential loss of high-end clientele who prefer traditional luxury service models. You're risking our brand reputation for what? A social justice experiment?" The room went quiet. Marcus let the silence sit for a moment, watching Richard's face flush slightly as he realized how his words sounded out loud. "A social justice experiment," Marcus said slowly. "Interesting way to describe treating human beings with dignity. That's not what I... No. Let's be clear about what you said." Marcus's voice was sharp now, cutting. "You're worried that by implementing policies that prevent discrimination, we'll lose clients who prefer discriminatory service. Clients who like their luxuries served with a side of exclusivity that keeps out people who don't look like them." Patricia intervened, her tone measured. "Marcus, no one here supports discrimination, but we have fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. If your initiative drives down profits, then we'll explain to shareholders why we're willing to make slightly less money in order to not be a company that tolerates racism." Marcus pulled up a presentation on the screen behind him. "But let's talk numbers, since that's what you care about." The first slide showed financial projections. Marcus spent the past week working with his analytics team, running models, gaming out scenarios. Current annual revenue, $4.2 billion. Projected revenue with initiative implementation, $4.1 billion in year one. That's a 2.4% drop, most of which comes from increased training costs and restructuring. Richard smirked. "So you're proposing we voluntarily lose $100 million in year one?" "Look at year two." Marcus advanced the slide. Projected revenue, $4.6 billion. A 9% increase over current numbers. And by year 5, we're looking at $5. $8 billion, a 38% growth over our current trajectory. The smirk faded. "How?" Patricia leaned forward, her interest genuinely piqued now. "Because you're thinking about this wrong." Marcus stood, pacing to the window. You're seeing the luxury hospitality market as static, a fixed pie we're all fighting over. But it's not. There's an entire demographic of high-income travelers who currently avoid traditional luxury brands because they've been made to feel unwelcome. Black executives, Latino entrepreneurs, Middle Eastern royalty, Asian tech founders, people with money who want excellent service without the side of judgment. He pulled up another slide market research data his team had compiled. According to Nielsen, African American consumers alone spent $1.3 trillion in 2022. That number is projected to reach $1.8 trillion by 2030. Latino buying power is at $1.9 trillion and growing. And yet, traditional luxury hospitality captures less than 15% of these demographics. Why? Because we've spent decades making them feel like they don't belong. Gerald Whitmore shifted uncomfortably. So your proposal is to what? Chase diverse clientele at the expense of our traditional base? No. My proposal is to be the first major luxury chain that actually lives up to the word hospitality. That doesn't make people prove they belong. That trains staff to see guests as human beings first, regardless of what they look like or what they're wearing. Marcus turned back to face the board. And in doing so, we capture market share that every other chain is ignoring. It's a risk, Patricia said, but her tone had shifted. She was calculating now, seeing the opportunity. Everything is a risk, Marcus countered. But let me tell you what's more risky doing nothing. The viral video from my incident at the Grand Celestial has 17 million views now. 17 million people watched a manager at our flagship property treat me, the company's owner, like trash because I was wearing the wrong coat. How do you think that plays for our brand? The room went silent again. Two responses are possible, Marcus continued. 1. We issue a corporate apology, fire Gerald Pemberton, and hope it blows over. Standard PR playbook. Or 2. We own it. We say, yes, this happened. It was unacceptable. And here's everything we're doing to make sure it never happens again. We turn a moment of shame into proof of commitment. Michelle Okafor spoke for the first time, her accent precise and clear. From a legal perspective, the second option is actually safer. If we fire Gerald and move on, we're admitting the problem exists but not addressing the systemic issues. That opens us up to class action lawsuits from other guests or employees who've experienced discrimination. But if we implement comprehensive reforms, we demonstrate good faith and reduce liability. Richard wasn't done fighting. What about Gerald's lawsuit? He's claiming reverse discrimination. Let him claim it. Marcus's voice was cold. We have 17 documented incidents of discriminatory behavior on his watch, plus testimony from multiple staff members, plus data showing a pattern of disproportionately targeting Black, Latino, and Middle Eastern guests. His lawsuit is dead on arrival, and his lawyer knows it. This is a cash grab, nothing more. Still creates negative press, Gerald Whitmore muttered. So does being known as the hotel chain that tolerates racism? Marcus shot back. Pick your negative press. Follow if you want to see how this plays out, because sometimes the fight isn't just about winning. It's about changing the game entirely. Patricia exchanged glances with two other board members, the kind of silent communication that happened in rooms like this among people who'd worked together long enough to speak without words. I want to see detailed implementation timelines, she said finally, property by property. How you're rolling this out, what the training looks like, how you're measuring success beyond financial metrics. It wasn't approval, but it wasn't rejection either. Marcus spent the next hour walking them through every detail. The unconscious bias training developed in partnership with actual civil rights organizations, not corporate consultants looking for easy checks. The guest advocate system with teeth advocates who could override manager decisions and report directly to corporate without fear of retaliation. The hiring practices that actively sought diversity without treating it as a quota or checkbox. And most importantly, the accountability mechanisms. Every property manager would be evaluated not just on profits, but on satisfaction scores broken down by demographic. Any property showing patterns of discrimination would face immediate audit and potential management placement. "This is unprecedented," Richard said, and for the first time, he didn't sound hostile, just tired. "No other major chain is doing anything like this." "Exactly," Marcus said simply. "We'll be first. And in 10 years, they'll all be scrambling to catch up." The vote, when it came, wasn't unanimous. Richard abstained. Gerald Whitmore voted no, his face red with barely suppressed anger. But the rest voted yes, some enthusiastically, some reluctantly, all of them seeing the financial logic, even if they didn't fully grasp the moral imperative. When the meeting ended, Patricia lingered as the others filed out. "That was quite a performance," she said, her tone unreadable. "It wasn't a performance. Everything is a performance, Marcus. You know that." She studied him with those sharp investor eyes. "But I'll admit, you've got me curious. If this works, if you actually manage to pull this off, it could redefine the industry. And if it doesn't?" Patricia smiled cold, calculating. "Then you'll have proven that idealism and business don't mix, and I'll have excellent data for my next investment decision. Either way, I win." She left without another word. Marcus stood alone in the boardroom, staring out at Central Park. Tourists and joggers moved through the paths below like blood cells through veins, keeping the city alive. His phone buzzed. Text from Kaisha. "First day complete. 5 staff members have already reported past discriminatory incidents under the new anonymous system. This is going to be bigger than we thought." Marcus typed back. "Good. Let it be big." Small never changed anything. Another text, this time from his brother. "Proud of you, man. Mom would be too." Marcus felt his eyes burn. He blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall in this boardroom, in this space designed to project invulnerability. But later, alone in his office with the city lights spreading out below him like stars, he let himself feel it. The exhaustion, the fear, the angry, desperate hope that maybe this would matter. That maybe one black CEO deciding to stop being quiet could create ripples that turned into waves. That maybe power didn't have to be about exclusion. Maybe it could be about expansion. His mother's voice echoed again. "You make it matter." "I'm trying, Mama," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm trying." 3 weeks after the board meeting, Marcus stood in the Grand Celestial's renovated training center and watched 27 managers from properties across the country file into the room. They looked exactly how he'd expected. Skeptical, defensive, some openly hostile. He could read their body language like a book he'd been forced to memorize. The crossed arms. Richard Chun from the Los Angeles property. The exaggerated checking of phones. Monica Alvarez from Miami. The performative note-taking designed to look engaged while actually tuning out nearly everyone else. Only a few seemed genuinely present. A young manager from the Chicago property named James, whose eyes tracked Marcus with careful attention. An older woman from New Orleans, Diane, who sat with the stillness of someone who'd seen enough to know when something important was happening. Kaisha stood at the front of the room beside him, her presence steady and professional. Over the past weeks, she'd transformed into exactly what Marcus had hoped to bridge between his vision and the practical reality of implementation. "Good morning," Marcus began, his voice cutting through the low murmur of conversation. "I'm Marcus Thorne. Most of you know that. What you might not know is why you're here." Monica raised her hand aggressive, challenging. "We're here for mandatory diversity training." The email was pretty clear. "The email was incomplete," Marcus corrected. "You're here because 3 weeks ago, I was thrown out of this hotel by a manager who looked at me and saw a problem instead of a person. And that moment made me realize something. We've built an empire on exclusion and called it excellence." The room shifted. Some managers looked uncomfortable, others defensive. Richard from LA actually scoffed. Something funny, Richard? Marcus asked mildly. With all due respect, Mr. Thorne. Stop, right there. Marcus held up a hand. In my experience, nothing good ever follows with all due respect. If you have something to say it without the corporate buffer. Richard's jaw tightened. Ben, I think you're overreacting to a single incident. Gerald Pemberton made a mistake, sure. But implementing company-wide changes that cost millions and risk alienating our core clientele. That's an emotional response, not a business decision. Several managers nodded. Marcus had expected this. You think it was a single incident? He said slowly. Let me show you something. Kaisha pulled up a presentation on the screen. The first slide showed a map of the United States with all 247 celestial properties marked. Some dots were green. Many were yellow. 15 were red. Over the past 3 weeks, we implemented an anonymous reporting system. Staff and guests could report incidents of discrimination without fear of retaliation. We've received 1,847 reports so far. Marcus let that number sit. Green properties have fewer than 5 reports. Yellow have 5 to 15. Red have over 20. The room was silent now, all phones down. The Los Angeles property, where you work, Richard, 32 reports. All from the past 18 months. 12 from guests, 20 from staff. The majority involve you specifically. Richard's face went pale. Those are anonymous. They could be anyone making things up. Disgruntled employees. We cross-referenced with security footage, reservation logs, and staff schedules. 89% of reports show corroborating evidence. Marcus pulled up another slide, this one showing patterns. Black guests at your property experience room availability issues at a rate 340% higher than white guests with identical booking profiles. Latino staff are promoted at a rate 60% lower than white staff with equivalent performance reviews. Middle Eastern guests are subjected to security verification at a rate 520% higher than any other demographic. The numbers hung in the air like accusations. So when you say this is an emotional response to a single incident, Marcus continued, his voice quiet but lethal, what you're actually saying is that you don't want to acknowledge the pattern, because acknowledging it means admitting you're part of the problem. Richard said nothing. His hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Comment below if you've ever been the anomaly that proved a pattern, because your experience matters. Marcus walked along the front of the room, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Here's what's going to happen over the next 6 months. Every single one of you is going to participate in the Celestial Hospitality Initiative. You're going to examine your biases. You're going to listen to people whose experiences don't match yours. You're going to learn what actual inclusive service looks like, not as a marketing gimmick, but as a fundamental operating principle. Monica from Miami raised her hand again, her tone more cautious now. And if some of us don't agree with the approach, then you're welcome to disagree, Marcus said simply. But you're not welcome to continue managing our properties. This isn't optional. This isn't a suggestion. This is how we operate now. He pulled up a final slide, a photograph of his mother. She was young in the picture, maybe 30, standing in front of a hotel in a housekeeping uniform. Her smile was tired but genuine, her hands resting on a cleaning cart. This is my mother, Dorothy Thorne, Marcus said quietly. She cleaned hotel rooms for 23 years, 6 days a week. She'd come home with her back aching and chemical burns on her hands, and she'd still find a way to make dinner, help with homework, and tell us stories about guests who never learned her name. The room was utterly silent now. She died of a heart attack at 56. Doctors said it was stress. The kind of stress that comes from spending your entire life breaking yourself for people who see you as invisible. Marcus's voice didn't waver, but something in his eyes did. I built this company for her, to prove that people like her, people like me, could be more than invisible, could be seen, could be valued. He turned away from the photograph, facing the room full of managers. Every guest who walks through our doors is somebody's mother, somebody's child, somebody's entire world. And I will not run a company where we treat them as anything less than that. I don't care if they're wearing Armani or a coat held together with hope. I don't care if their credit card is platinum or barely has a limit. They're human beings, and they deserve to be treated as such. Diane from New Orleans was crying silently. James from Chicago looked like he'd been struck. Even Richard seemed shaken, his earlier hostility replaced with something more complicated. Now, Marcus continued, his voice becoming businesslike again. Kaisha's going to walk you through the specific components of the initiative. You'll be paired with mentors, staff members from diverse backgrounds who've experienced discrimination in hospitality firsthand. You'll shadow them, listen to them, learn from them. Kaisha took over, her presentation crisp and comprehensive. Marcus stepped back, watching the managers' faces as she outlined the program. Some were genuinely engaged now, others still resistant, but quieter about it. A few looked terrified, like they just realized their careers were on much shakier ground than they'd thought. During the break, James approached Marcus carefully. "Mr. Thorne, I thank you for saying that about your mother." His voice was soft. "My father was a janitor at a country club for 30 years. I know what it's like to watch someone you love be treated as invisible." Marcus studied the young man, couldn't be more than 28, 29. "What property do you manage?" "Chicago. The one on Michigan Avenue." "How many reports?" "4. James met his eyes directly. "All valid. All from before I started, but I should have caught them sooner. Should have done something. And now?" "Now I will. I promise you that." Marcus believed him. You could tell when someone got it, really got it, versus when they were just saying what you wanted to hear. "Keep that promise," Marcus said, "and you'll go far in this company." When the training resumed, Marcus stayed to watch. 3 hours of Kaisha leading managers through exercises designed to surface unconscious bias, making them role-play scenarios from the perspective of guests who'd been discriminated against, showing them data, testimonials, video evidence of the patterns they'd been perpetuating. It was uncomfortable, painful. Some managers left during breaks and didn't come back, but others stayed. Others leaned in. That evening, Marcus sat in his office reviewing the day's outcomes with Kaisha and David. "We lost 6 managers today," David said, scrolling through resignation emails. Richard submitted his immediately after the session. Said this company was no longer aligned with his values. "Good," Marcus said flatly. "Let him go somewhere that is. The press is going to have a field day," David warned. Exodus of experienced managers. Claims of reverse discrimination. "You know how this plays. Then let them play it." Marcus stood, walked to his window, his thinking spot. "I'm not building a company for the press. I'm building it for every person who's ever been made to feel small in a place designed to make them feel valued." Kaisha looked up from her tablet. "For what it's worth, I think today was a turning point. Not everyone got it, but enough did. And the ones who did, they're going to carry this forward." "I hope you're right." "I am." Her confidence was absolute. "Because this isn't just about policies anymore. You made it personal. You showed them your mother. You gave them a story to connect to. That matters more than any training manual." After they left, Marcus pulled up the photo he'd shown the managers, his mother in her housekeeping uniform. He kept it on his phone, had looked at it 1,000 times. But tonight, it hit different. She'd be proud, he thought. And then immediately, she'd tell me to keep going. So he would. Gerald Pemberton's lawsuit hit the news on a Tuesday morning, timed perfectly for maximum media impact. Former manager claims racial discrimination after confrontation with black CEO, ran the headline in the Wall Street Journal. By noon, it had been picked up by every major outlet, each adding their own spin. Marcus was in a meeting with hotel developers in Dubai when his phone started exploding. Text after text, email after email. everyone wanting to know his response, his statement, his strategy. He ignored them all and finished his meeting. Later, on the plane back to New York, he finally read Gerald's complaint. It was exactly as predictable as Marcus had anticipated. Claims of a hostile work environment, allegations of reverse discrimination, a demand for $5 million in damages plus punitive fees. But there was something else too, something that made Marcus's jaw tighten. Gerald had given interviews, multiple interviews, to conservative media outlets, to business publications, to anyone who would listen. And in every single one, he painted himself as the victim, a hard-working manager who'd made an honest mistake and was now being crucified by a CEO with a racial agenda. "I simply asked a gentleman who appeared homeless to leave," Gerald said in a Fox Business interview. "I had no way of knowing he was the owner. And now my entire career is being destroyed because I'm white and he's as black." That's the real discrimination here. The comment section was exactly what Marcus expected. A cesspool of people eager to believe that a black billionaire was somehow the real oppressor. That expecting basic human decency was woke overreach. That Gerald was a martyr for saying what everyone was really thinking. Marcus closed his laptop and stared out the plane window at clouds that looked like cotton and felt like rage. David sat across from him, reviewing legal briefs. Michelle wants to destroy him in court. She's got a whole strategy mapped out. Discovery will expose every discriminatory incident. Character witnesses, the works. She says we can bury him. But Marcus heard the unspoken word. But it'll be ugly. Extended media circus. Discovery cuts both ways. His lawyers will dig into every business decision you've ever made, looking for anything they can spin as discrimination against white employees. They'll try to make this about you, not about what he did. Marcus was quiet for a long time, then set up a press conference. "Tomorrow, New York. I want every major outlet there." "Boss, are you sure? I'm tired of letting other people tell my story." "Set it up." The press conference took place in the Grand Celestial's main ballroom, the same space where Marcus had hosted charity galas and industry events. Now it was packed with reporters, cameras, and the particular energy that came from people sensing blood in the water. Marcus walked to the podium in a dark suit, no tie. He'd debated the tie. David thought he should wear one, project traditional authority. But Marcus was done with traditional anything. The room hushed when he raised his hand. "Good afternoon. I'm going to make a statement, and then I'll take questions. But first, I want to show you something." He nodded to Kaisha, who pulled up a video on the screens flanking the podium. The footage was from the Grand Celestial security cameras. It showed Marcus entering the lobby in his wet coat, showed him approaching the desk, and then it showed, with devastating clarity, the 17 minutes that followed. Gerald's face twisted with disgust. The pointing finger, the raised voice, the security guards moving in, and Marcus standing quietly, with a dignity that made the cruelty around him even more stark. When the video ended, the room was silent. "That's what happened," Marcus said quietly. "Not the story Gerald Pemberton is telling. Not the version where I'm a vindictive CEO with a racial agenda. Just what actually happened when a black man walked into a hotel lobby looking tired." He pulled up more footage. This is from 8 months ago. A black family father, mother, 2 children checking in with a valid reservation. You'll notice Gerald keeping them waiting for 45 minutes while he verifies their payment. Same reservation system that immediately confirms white guests shows a sudden technical issue. The family leaves. Another video. This is from 5 months ago. A Middle Eastern businessman, wealthy by any standard, asking about conference facilities. Gerald tells him they're fully booked. The reservation system shows 7 open dates that month. Another video, and another, and another. 17 incidents total. All showing the same pattern, all showing Gerald Pemberton making decisions based on how people looked rather than any actual justification. The reporters were scribbling frantically now, cameras flashing like strobe lights. Marcus let the images sink in before continuing. Gerald Pemberton says he made an honest mistake, but I'm punishing him for not recognizing me. But this was never about me. Marcus's voice was steady, controlled. This is about a pattern of behavior spanning years. A pattern of treating guests as unworthy based solely on their appearance or ethnicity. A pattern that staff reported and corporate ignored until I experienced it myself. He paused, letting that land. Mr. Pemberton claims reverse discrimination. That I'm targeting him because he's white and I'm black. Let me be very clear. I'm targeting him because he's a manager who violated the fundamental principle of hospitality, treating people with dignity. Marcus leaned forward slightly. His race is irrelevant. His actions are everything. A reporter from CNN stood. Mr. Thorne, critics say your hospitality initiative is too aggressive. That you're implementing racial quotas and pushing out experienced managers who don't fit a political agenda. How do you respond? Show me the quota, Marcus said simply. Point to anywhere in the initiative documentation where we specify hiring based on race. You won't find it. What you'll find is a commitment to recruiting from diverse talent pools, eliminating bias in hiring practices, and ensuring guests of all backgrounds receive equal treatment. If that's political, then hospitality itself is political. Another reporter stood. But 6 managers have resigned since the initiative launched. Doesn't that suggest? It suggests that 6 people didn't want to work for a company committed to inclusion. And I'm fine with that. Marcus's tone was matter-of-fact. I'd rather have 200 managers who believe in our mission than 206 who are doing it grudgingly, because they have to. What about the financial impact? This from a Bloomberg correspondent. Your stock dropped 3 points after the lawsuit was filed. Investors are nervous. Investors are always nervous. That's their job. A ripple of laughter through the room. But let's talk real numbers. Since implementing the initiative 6 weeks ago, we've seen a 17% increase in bookings from demographics that previously avoided luxury hotels. Our guest satisfaction scores are up across every measured category. And employee retention has improved by 12%. Turns out people like working for companies that treat them with respect. He pulled up a final slide financial projections that his team had updated that morning. We're on track to exceed our 5-year growth targets by year 3. Why? Because we're capturing market share every other luxury chain is ignoring. We're building loyalty with guests who finally feel welcome. And we're creating a workplace culture that attracts top talent. Marcus looked directly into the cameras. Doing the right thing and doing good business aren't mutually exclusive. They never were. A reporter from Fox Business stood. Marcus recognized him from the interview with Gerald. Mr. Thorne, aren't you concerned that you're alienating traditional luxury consumers? People who expect a certain ... standard. The pause before standard was deliberate. Marcus heard it, and so did everyone else in the room. I'm going to assume you mean that question in good faith, Marcus said carefully, and answer it directly. If by traditional luxury consumers, you mean people who expect excellence in service, attention to detail, and an elevated experience, no, we're not alienating them. We're serving them better than ever. He paused, his eyes never leaving the reporter. But if by traditional luxury consumers, you mean people who expect luxury to come with a sign of exclusivity that keeps out anyone who doesn't look a certain way? Then yes, we absolutely are alienating them. And I sleep perfectly well with that decision. The room erupted, some reporters applauding, others shouting follow-up questions. Marcus raised his hand for quiet. I want to say something directly to the people watching this, he continued, his tone shifting to something more personal. If you've ever walked into a space and felt immediately that you didn't belong, if you've been followed in a store, questioned in a lobby, made to feel like your presence was an inconvenience, I see you. This initiative is for you. Subscribe and follow because this story isn't over. It's just beginning. And what comes next will show you that change isn't just possible. It's inevitable. He looked around the room, at all those faces, some sympathetic, some skeptical, some openly hostile. My mother spent 23 years being invisible to people in rooms like this. She cleaned up after them, made their beds, scrubbed their toilets. And not once did most of them see her as a full human being with dreams, fears, a family who loved her. Marcus's voice cracked slightly but didn't break. I can't change what happened to her. I can't go back and make those people see her. But I can build a company where no one else has to be invisible, where your value isn't determined by your clothes, or your accent, or the color of your skin. The silence that followed was profound. Last question, Marcus said. A young reporter from a digital outlet stood. She looked nervous. Mr. Thorne, what would you say to Gerald Pemberton if he was in this room right now? Marcus considered that for a long moment. I'd say, I hope you learn something from this. I hope you sit with the discomfort of being held accountable and come out the other side a better person. And I hope one day you understand that this was never about punishing you. It was about protecting everyone who comes after you. He stepped away from the podium. The room exploded with shouted questions, cameras flashing, everyone wanting more. But Marcus was done. He'd said what he needed to say. Backstage, Keisha met him with a tablet showing real-time social media response. It's blowing up, she said, scrolling rapidly. Mostly positive. The video evidence is being shared everywhere. Hashtag Celestial Accountability is trending #1 worldwide. David appeared, phone pressed to his ear. He covered the mouthpiece. That was Patricia. The board wants an emergency meeting. Stock is up 7 points. They single quotes read ... impressed. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. They're relieved. There's a difference. Maybe. But relieved is better than hostile. David paused. You did good up there, boss. Really good. Later that evening, Marcus sat alone in his office, watching the sun set over Manhattan. His phone had been ringing non-stop interview requests, speaking invitations, investors suddenly very interested in the hospitality initiative. He ignored most of it and pulled up his mother's photo again. I hope I made you proud, Mama, he whispered to the screen. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is James, Chicago property. Just wanted you to know after watching your press conference, 3 of my staff members came forward about incidents I didn't know about. We're handling them. Thank you for making it safe to speak up. Another text, this one from Diane in New Orleans. Amen and amen. Been in this industry 34 years and never seen leadership like this. Don't stop. And then, unexpectedly, an email from Gerald Pemberton's lawyer. Client wishes to withdraw lawsuit and issue public apology. Requests private meeting to discuss terms. Marcus read it twice. Then, he forwarded it to Michelle with a single instruction. No settlement. No NDA. If he wants to apologize, he does it publicly and honestly, or not at all. Her response came back immediately. Understood. I'll draft terms. Marcus stood and walked to the window one more time, looking out at the city that had shaped him, challenged him, tried to break him, and ultimately made him. I'm not done yet, he said to his reflection. Not even close. 4 months after the press conference, Marcus stood in the lobby of the Grand Celestial and barely recognized it. Not because anything physical had changed. The marble was still polished to a mirror shine. The chandeliers still cast the same warm glow. The furniture still cost more than luxury cars. But everything felt different. A black family checked in at the desk. The father in a business suit, the mother in traditional West African dress, 2 children in tow. The front desk attendant, a young Latino man named Carlos, greeted them with genuine warmth. No double-checking IDs. No verifying reservations. Just, welcome to the Grand Celestial. We're honored to have you. Across the lobby, an elderly Middle Eastern couple sat in the lounge area, sipping tea, while a staff member explained the hotel's amenities in careful, respectful Arabic. The man's turban and the woman's hijab drew no sideways glances. No whispered conversations. Just existence, normalized. Near the elevators, Marcus spotted Kaisha training a new hire, a young black woman fresh out of Cornell's hospitality program. Kaisha's protege, continuing the cycle. This was what he'd been trying to build. Not just policies and procedures, but culture. Transformation at the cellular level. Penny for your thoughts. Marcus turned to find an older black man in an expensive suit standing beside him. Distinguished, maybe mid-60s, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that had seen things. Just observing, Marcus said, carefully, not recognizing the man but sensing something familiar about him. The man smiled. I'm Charles Williams. I knew your mother. Marcus's breath caught. You.What? Dorothy Thorne. I was a bellhop here 25 years ago, when this was still the Imperial Hotel, before you bought it. Dorothy worked housekeeping. Third floor, mostly. Charles's eyes were distant with memory. She used to bring extra sandwiches from home and share them with staff during breaks. Said nobody should work a full shift on an empty stomach. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I was 19, stupid, angry at the world. Nearly got myself fired for talking back to a guest who called me ... Well, you can imagine. Charles paused. Your mother pulled me aside after my shift. Told me, being angry is easy. Being excellent is hard. But excellent is what they can't argue with. That sounds like her, Marcus managed. She talked about you all the time. A brilliant son who was going to do something big. Who was going to change things. Charles looked around the lobby. I saw your press conference. Read about the hospitality initiative. And I thought, Dorothy was right. You did change things. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the lobby's choreography of arrival and departure. Why are you here? Marcus asked finally. I own a small boutique hotel chain. 8 properties, nothing like your empire. But I watched what you did, and I thought if Marcus Thorne can transform a 247-property giant, surely I can do the same with 8. Charles pulled out a business card. I'd love to learn from you. Maybe collaborate on best practices. The more of us doing this work, the faster the industry changes. Marcus took the card, feeling something expand in his chest, ripples becoming waves. I'd like that, he said. Let's set something up. After Charles left, Marcus made his way to Kaisha's office, formerly Gerald's office, now completely transformed. Where Gerald had hung awards and photos of himself with minor celebrities, Kaisha had installed a wall of quotes from civil rights leaders, hospitality pioneers, and guests who'd shared meaningful experiences at celestial properties. Boss, Kaisha looked up from her computer. Good timing. I wanted to show you something. She pulled up a video on her screen footage from a guest's phone, posted to social media that morning. The video showed a young trans woman checking in at the Celestial Boston property. The front desk attendant, without hesitation or judgment, asked for her preferred name and pronouns, made a note in the system, and ensured the rest of the staff would use them correctly throughout her stay. The caption read, "First time I've ever checked into a hotel and been treated like a complete human being. Thank you at Celestial Hotels for showing the industry how it's done. Hashtag Hospitality for All." The video had 2.3 million views and thousands of comments, mostly positive, some hostile, all engaged. This is the 4th video like this week, Kaisha said. Guests filming their positive experiences and sharing them. The algorithm is picking them up, and we're getting organic reach we couldn't buy with 10 million in advertising. Marcus smiled. We're becoming known for something real. More than that. We're changing expectations. Other chains are starting to implement similar policies, not because they want to, but because their guests are demanding it. They're seeing our numbers and realizing inclusion isn't just moral, it's profitable. Copy is the sincerest form of capitulation, Marcus said wryly. His phone buzzed. Text from David. Turn on CNBC. Now. Marcus pulled out his phone and found the live stream. A panel of hospitality industry experts discussing luxury hotel trends. And there, front and center, was the discussion. The celestial model is proving that luxury and inclusion aren't mutually exclusive, one analyst was saying. They've captured 17% more market share in key demographics while maintaining occupancy rates at 93%. Traditional luxury brands are scrambling to respond. Another panelist, older and clearly skeptical, pushed back. But at what cost to brand prestige? Luxury has always been about exclusivity. Exclusivity of experience, the first analyst interrupted. Not exclusivity of access. Celestial proved you can deliver world-class service without discriminatory gatekeeping. The numbers speak for themselves. Marcus lowered his phone, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. We're winning, Kaisha said quietly. We're surviving, Marcus corrected. Winning comes later, but privately. Watching that family in West African dress, laughing with their children in the lobby. Watching Carlos treat every guest with the same respect regardless of appearance. Watching the culture he'd tried to build actually taking root privately. He thought maybe this was what winning looked like after all. That evening, Marcus attended a dinner hosted by the National Association of Black Hotel Owners, a group he joined years ago but rarely had time to engage with deeply. The dinner was at a small black-owned restaurant in Harlem, the kind of place his mother would have loved. Good food, genuine warmth, laughter that felt like family. Marcus found himself at a table with 5 other black hotel owners, all of them running smaller operations, bed and breakfasts, boutique properties, regional chains. Man, what you did took courage, said a woman named Rashida, who owned 3 boutique hotels in Atlanta. Going public like that, taking on the whole industry. I've been scared to even implement basic anti-discrimination policies because I'm worried about losing customers. You'll lose some, Marcus said honestly, but you'll gain more. And the ones you gain will be loyal. Will tell their friends. We'll come back. A man named Vernon, who ran a historic black-owned hotel in Charleston, leaned forward. But you have resources, capital. You can afford to take risks. For those of us operating on thin margins, ... double quotes. I get it, Marcus interrupted gently. I do, but here's the thing, I didn't start with resources. I started with $300 and a dream. Built it slowly, carefully, while working 3 jobs. And yeah, now I have capital. So let me help you. The table went quiet. I'm setting up a fund, Marcus continued. The Dorothy Thorne Hospitality Excellence Fund, named after my mother. It'll provide grants and low-interest loans to small, minority-owned hotels, implementing inclusive hospitality practices. Training, technology, marketing support, whatever you need to make the transition sustainable. Rashida's eyes filled with tears. You're serious? I'm serious. Email me your details. All of you. He looked around the table. We can't wait for the big chains to change. We have to change and then force them to catch up. Comment below if you believe real change starts from the ground up, because that's what this has always been about. The dinner stretched late into the night, conversations flowing from business to personal, past to future, struggle to hope. These were his people, Marcus realized. Not the board members or investors or executives in expensive suits, but the people building something meaningful against impossible odds. Walking back to his hotel later, Manhattan alive with its midnight energy, Marcus felt lighter than he had in months. His phone buzzed. Email from Gerald Pemberton. Marcus hesitated, then opened it. Mr. Thorne, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. My lawyer advised me not to contact you directly, but I need to say something, and I need to say it without legal buffer. I've spent the past 4 months in therapy. Court mandated at first, but I kept going after the mandate ended because I realized I needed it. My therapist asked me to write down every assumption I'd made about guests based on their appearance. Every time I'd made someone feel unwelcome. The list was 17 pages long. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness or sympathy. I'm writing because I want you to know that your press conference, showing those videos, forcing me to see myself from the outside, it broke something open in me, something that needed to break. I grew up in a town where everyone looked like me, went to schools where everyone looked like me, built a career in an industry that rewarded me for keeping people who didn't look like me at a distance. And I never questioned it. Never thought about what I was doing or who I was hurting. That's not an excuse. It's just context. I don't expect to work in hospitality again. I probably don't deserve to. But I want you to know that because of what you did, because you refused to let this slide, because you made it impossible to ignore, I'm becoming a better person. My daughter is 12. Mixed race, her mother is black. And I realized, with horror, that I'd been teaching her through my actions that people like her mother didn't belong in places like the hotels I managed. What kind of father does that? So thank you for holding me accountable, for not letting me hide behind corporate language and legal technicalities, for showing me who I was so I could become someone different. I hope your mother would be proud of what you've built. Gerald Pemberton Marcus read the email 3 times, his emotions complicated and layered. Anger, still, for the years of harm, for every person Gerald had made feel small, but also something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. He typed a reply. Gerald, thank you for this email, for the honesty, for doing the hard work of change. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship beyond this exchange. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust that the change is real and lasting, but I appreciate you trying. And yes, I think my mother would be proud. Not because I destroyed you, but because I tried to build something that might prevent the next Gerald from needing to learn this lesson the hard way. Keep going. Keep growing. And if you're serious about being better, find ways to use your experience to help others recognize their own biases. That's how you make amends, not through apologies, but through action. Marcus, he hit send and walked the rest of the way to his hotel, the night air cool against his face, the city humming around him with infinite possibility. 1 year after that night in the rain, Marcus stood on the stage at the International Hospitality Leadership Conference in Singapore, looking out at 3,000 industry professionals from 68 countries. A year ago, half these people would have written him off as naive, idealistic, too emotional to lead a major corporation. Now they were here to learn from him. The question I'm asked most frequently, Marcus began, his voice carrying across the massive auditorium, is whether the Celestial Hospitality Initiative was worth the cost, the disruption, the controversy, the risk. He paused, let the question hang. Last quarter, Celestial Hotels posted record profits, a 23% increase over the previous year. Guest satisfaction scores are at 96% across all demographics, the highest in company history. Employee retention is up 38%. We've opened 14 new properties in markets we couldn't previously penetrate because our brand wasn't trusted by local communities. He pulled up a slide showing the financial data. So yes, from a purely business perspective, it was worth it. But let me show you something else. The slide changed to show a letter, handwritten on hotel stationery. Marcus had received thousands of letters since implementing the initiative, but this one had stayed with him. Dear Mr. Thorne, I'm writing to thank you for what you've built. 3 weeks ago, I checked into the Celestial Chicago with my husband for our anniversary. We're an interracial couple. I'm black. He's white, and we've spent 15 years dealing with stares, comments, and treatment that ranges from cold to hostile in supposedly luxury establishments. At the Celestial, the staff didn't blink, didn't make assumptions, just treated us like any other couple celebrating their love. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't spend my anniversary bracing for judgment. I spent it feeling ... normal. That might not seem like much to you, but to me, it was everything. Thank you for making space for people like us. Jennifer and Michael Rodriguez. The auditorium was silent. "That is why it was worth it," Marcus said quietly. "Because hospitality isn't just about thread counts and Michelin stars. It's about making people feel human. About creating spaces where dignity isn't a luxury reserved for people who look a certain way or come from certain backgrounds." He advanced the slide again, showing a series of photos. The black family from that first day in the transformed lobby. The trans woman from Boston, whose video went viral. An elderly couple wearing traditional indigenous dress at a celestial property in New Mexico. A group of Muslim women in hijabs laughing over tea in a celestial lounge. These are our guests now. Not in spite of our standards, but because we finally understood what real standards look like. Follow if you believe that the future of any industry is inclusion, because what happens in hospitality will eventually happen everywhere. Marcus spent the next 45 minutes walking the audience through the initiative structure, implementation challenges, and measurable outcomes. He was honest about the resistance, the managers who quit, the investors who panicked. But he was equally honest about the results. The data showing that diverse teams perform better. The financial reports proving that inclusion drives growth. The testimonials from guests who became loyal customers because they finally felt seen. During the Q&A session, a hotel executive from Dubai raised his hand. "Mr. Thorne, your initiative works in America perhaps, but how do we adapt it for cultures with different values, different social structures?" Marcus had anticipated this question. He'd been having versions of it for months. "Hospitality is universal," he said carefully, "but implementation has to be culturally contextualized. We're not exporting American values. We're exporting a principle. Treat people with dignity, regardless of what makes them different. What that looks like in Dubai will be different than Chicago. In Tokyo, different than Lagos. The key is working with local communities to understand what barriers exist and how to remove them." Another hand went up. A young woman from the back. "What advice do you have for those of us who want to implement similar changes, but work for companies where leadership doesn't support it?" Marcus leaned against the podium, his posture relaxed but his tone serious. "Document everything. Build your case with data. Show how inclusion improves metrics leadership actually cares about retention, satisfaction, revenue. And if they still won't listen?" He paused. "Then you have to decide whether you can be complicit in a system you know is broken. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is leave and build something better elsewhere." After the conference, Marcus was surrounded by people wanting to talk hotel owners from emerging markets. Consultants looking to partner, journalists requesting interviews. But the person who caught his attention was a young black man, maybe 25, standing at the edge of the crowd, patient, waiting. When the crowd finally dispersed, the young man approached. "Mr. Thorne, I'm DeMarco Johnson. I'm in my last year at Cornell's hospitality program. I just wanted to say, you're the reason I stayed." Marcus tilted his head. "Stayed? In the program?" "In hospitality." DeMarco's voice was quiet but firm. "I was ready to quit last year. Tired of being the only black face in most of my classes. Tired of internships where I was treated like a diversity checkbox. Tired of professors who couldn't understand why I'd be hesitant to work in an industry with such a problematic history." He paused, gathering himself. "Then you did your press conference, showed those videos, launched the initiative. And I thought, if he can transform an entire company, maybe I can help transform the industry. So I stayed. And now I have a job offer from Celestial Chicago, working under James." Marcus felt his eyes burn. He blinked hard. "James is good people. You'll learn a lot. I hope to learn from you too, sir, eventually." "You will. And DeMarco?" Marcus extended his hand. "Thank you for staying, for choosing this path. We need people like you." They shook hands, and Marcus saw in the young man's eyes something he recognized. Hunger, determination, and the particular strength that came from deciding you were going to matter whether the world was ready or not. That night, alone in his hotel room, Marcus video called his siblings. Jasmine appeared on screen first, her home studio visible behind her. The conquering hero returns from Singapore. How was it? Exhausting. Inspiring. Both. Marcus settled into a chair by the window. How are things there? Good. Mama's friend finally gave up on trying to set you up with her daughter. Moved on to trying to set you up with her niece. Marcus groaned. Please, tell me you intervened. Oh, I intervened. Told her you're too busy revolutionizing hospitality to date. Their brother Marcus Jr., Minjae, to differentiate from Marcus, joined the call. I saw your conference speech. Someone posted clips on LinkedIn. Very inspiring, big bro. How's the divorce going? Marcus asked gently. MJ's face tightened. Finalized next week. It's good. Hard, but good. We're being civilized about it. For the kids. They talked for an hour about family, about life, about their mother, and how they each carried her forward in different ways. Jasmine through her art that celebrated black excellence. MJ through his work as a public defender, fighting for people who couldn't afford justice. Marcus through hotels that made people feel human. When they hung up, Marcus sat in the quiet, looking out at Singapore's skyline. His phone buzzed. Email from David. Board meeting next week. They want to discuss expanding the initiative to our international properties. Unanimous support. Apparently, you're no longer too emotional. You're a visionary. Corporate speak is wild. Marcus smiled. Then another email. This one from an address he didn't recognize. Mr. Thorne, I'm a white hotel owner in Mississippi. Watched your journey over the past year. I've been running my property the traditional way for 30 years. After seeing your results, I want to change. Can you help? He forwarded it to Kaisha with a note. Our work continues. Schedule a call with this owner. Let's see if we can bring Mississippi into the future. One by one, they were changing. Not everyone, not everywhere, but enough. Enough to matter. Marcus opened his photos and found the picture of his mother again. The one he'd shown to those managers a year ago. The one he carried everywhere. I hope you can see this, Mama, he whispered. I hope wherever you are, you know it mattered. That your life mattered. That every person you were invisible to, every guest who never learned your name, they don't get to define your legacy. I do. We do. All of us who refuse to let people be invisible anymore. His reflection in the window stared back at him, older now, more tired, but also more certain. He'd spent his entire life trying to prove he belonged in rooms that weren't built for him. Now he was building the rooms himself, making them big enough for everyone. And that, finally, felt like winning. 5 years later, Marcus stood outside the one-bedroom apartment in Detroit where he'd grown up. The building looked different, renovated, gentrified. Part of a neighborhood transformation that had priced out most of the families who'd lived there when Marcus was a child. But standing there, with autumn leaves swirling around his feet and his breath visible in the cold Michigan air, he was 8 years old again. He could almost hear his mother's voice calling him in for dinner. Could almost see his younger siblings running past, laughing and arguing in the way only children can. Could almost feel the particular anxiety of growing up with everything to prove and nothing in your pockets but dreams. You gonna stand there all day, or you coming in? Marcus turned to find his sister Jasmine leaning against her car, smiling. When did you get here? He asked. 20 minutes ago. Been watching you have your moment. She walked over, linked her arm through his. It's okay to feel things, you know? You don't always have to be CEO Marcus Thorne, master of his emotions. I feel plenty. In private. When no one's looking. She squeezed his arm. Come on. Manjae's already inside with the kids. They're turning the community center into a Jackson Pollock painting. The community center had been Marcus's project, his way of giving back to the neighborhood that shaped him. It was housed in what used to be an abandoned warehouse. now transformed into a space offering free hospitality training, job placement, mentorship, and childcare for families in the community. It was funded by the Dorothy Thorne Foundation, which Marcus had established 3 years ago. The foundation provided scholarships, training programs, and small business loans to people entering the hospitality industry from underrepresented backgrounds. Inside, the space hummed with life. 20 teenagers sat in a mock hotel lobby, practicing check-in procedures under the guidance of Keisha and James, both of whom now ran Celestial's training program. In another room, a group of adults, formerly incarcerated people working to rebuild their lives, learned housekeeping management from instructors who understood that dignity in work started with being treated with dignity as workers. MJ's kids, Marcus's niece and nephew, ages 7 and 9, were indeed creating art with wild abandon on a wall designated for community murals. Uncle Marcus, his niece, Dottie, named after her grandmother, launched herself at him. Marcus caught her, lifting her up. "Hey, little one, making something beautiful?" "Making something loud," she corrected. "Miss Jasmine says art should make noise." "Your aunt would say that." He set Dottie down and watched her run back to the mural. Her brother Marcus 3, because apparently the family was determined to confuse everyone, following close behind. MJ approached, paint splattered and grinning. "Your foundation is changing lives, man. I've had 3 clients come through here. All of them got jobs. One's managing a Celestial property in Ann Arbor now." "That's the point." Marcus looked around the space, feeling that familiar expansion in his chest. "Every person we train, every door we open, that's one more person who doesn't have to fight as hard as Mama did. She'd lose her mind if she could see this," MJ said quietly. "Her son, building an empire and then using it to lift people up." Later, Marcus addressed the training class, 20 faces looking at him with varying degrees of hope and skepticism. "Most of you know my story," he began. "Grew up here, in this neighborhood. My mother cleaned hotels 6 days a week. I watched her come home exhausted, her hands raw, her body broken from work that didn't value her as human." He paused, letting them see him. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just a man from their neighborhood who'd found a different path. "I built Celestial hotels because I wanted to prove something to myself, to the world, to everyone who'd ever looked at me and decided I didn't belong. And for a long time, that was enough. Proving I could win in a game that wasn't designed for people like me." He walked along the row of students, making eye contact with each one. But then something happened. I walked into one of my own hotels looking tired and was treated like trash. And I realized all the success, all the money, all the power, it didn't matter, because the system itself was broken. And you can't win a broken game. You have to change the rules. A young woman raised her hand. "Mr. Thorne, how do we change rules when we don't have power?" "You build power. Slowly, carefully, by being so excellent, so undeniable that they have to make space for you." Marcus leaned against a desk. "But also, you find each other. You build communities. You support people who are fighting the same fight. Because none of us can change the system alone. But together," he smiled, "together, we're unstoppable." Drop a comment if you're building something that matters, because that's how change happens. One person, one community, one act of courage at a time. After the class, Marcus sat in his old apartment, now rented to a young family, at the kitchen table where his mother had helped him with homework every night. The current tenant, a single mother named Keisha. Different Keisha. Marcus's world was full of strong black women named Keisha. Brought him coffee. "It's surreal having you here," she said. "My kids think you're basically Tony Stark," Marcus laughed. "Tell them I'm significantly less interesting. You built $1 billion company and changed an entire industry. That's pretty interesting. I got lucky. Luck is what people call it when they can't admit that someone outworked them." Keisha sat across from him. "I read about your foundation. I'm taking the hospitality training next session. Trying to get out of retail. into something with better pay and benefits. You'll do great. If you work hard, there's a job waiting at Celestial when you finish." Her eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "I don't joke about jobs. Talk to Kaisha, the other Kaisha, my director of training. Tell her I sent you." After she left, Marcus sat alone in the quiet, running his hands over the scarred tabletop. How many meals had been stretched across this surface? How many conversations? How many times had his mother sat here, exhausted, still finding the energy to ask about his day, to help with math problems, to tell him he could be anything he wanted? His phone buzzed. Text from David. "Tokyo property just reported 98% satisfaction scores. Shanghai wants to implement your model. Paris is asking for more training resources. Boss, we're not just changing Celestial anymore. We're changing the industry." Marcus typed back. "Good. That was always the plan." Another text, this one from a number saved simply as Gerald P. Over the past 5 years, Gerald Pemberton had become an unlikely ally. After his public apology and 2 years of genuine transformation work, he'd started consulting with hotels on recognizing and eliminating discriminatory practices. His presentations, raw, honest, difficult, featured him as the cautionary tale, the man who'd spent years causing harm without realizing it. Marcus just finished a training session in Boston. Hotel manager broke down crying, said he'd been doing exactly what I used to do, didn't even realize it. "Thank you for not destroying me, for giving me a chance to become someone different." Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. His relationship with Gerald was complicated, probably always would be. You don't forget being treated the way Gerald had treated him. But forgiveness, Marcus had learned, wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing what you carried forward. He replied, "You did the work. I just held the mirror. Keep going." That evening, Marcus attended the annual Dorothy Thorne Foundation Gala at the Grand Celestial. The ballroom was packed with donors, industry leaders, politicians, and most importantly, the scholarship recipients and program graduates whose lives the foundation had touched. Marcus made his way through the crowd, shaking hands and making small talk, until he spotted someone who made him stop cold. Mrs. Hendricks, his second-grade teacher, the one who told him boys like him didn't become astronauts. She looked older, frailer, but he recognized her instantly. And from the way her eyes widened when she saw him, she recognized him too. They stared at each other across the crowded room. Marcus felt Jasmine's hand on his arm steadying, supporting. "You don't have to," Jasmine whispered. "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "I do." He walked over. Mrs. Hendricks clutched her purse like a shield. "Marcus," she said, her voice thin. I wasn't sure you'd remember me." "I remember." A long, uncomfortable silence. "I came tonight because I read about the foundation, about what you've built, and I needed to ... double quotes. She swallowed hard. "I needed to apologize for what I said to you, for crushing your dreams when I should have been nurturing them, for being one more voice telling you that you couldn't when I should have been showing you that you could." Marcus studied her face, genuine remorse written in every line. "Why do you say it?" he asked. Not angry, just curious. Why tell a 7-year-old to give up on his dreams? Mrs. Hendricks's eyes filled with tears. Because that's what I'd been taught. That's what I believed. That there were limits to what black children could achieve. And it was kinder to help them accept those limits than to let them be disappointed. She wiped her eyes. "I was wrong. So profoundly wrong. And I've spent 30 years wondering how many children I damaged with that wrong thinking." Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, "You know what I told my mother that night? I said I was going to go so high you'd need a telescope to see me. And you did," Mrs. Hendricks whispered. "You went higher than I ever imagined possible. Not because of you, but not entirely in spite of you either." Marcus's voice was gentle now. "You taught me something important that day, that the world would try to limit me, put ceilings on my ambitions, tell me what I couldn't be. And I needed to decide whether I believed those voices or build something so undeniable they'd have to shut up. He paused, watching her process that, "I forgive you, Mrs. Hendricks, not because you deserve it, but because carrying anger at a teacher from second grade for the rest of my life is exhausting, and I've got better things to do with my energy." She sobbed, then messy, loud, the kind of crying that comes from deep relief. Jasmine appeared with tissues, ever practical. When Mrs. Hendricks composed herself, she looked at Marcus with something like wonder. "What you've built here, the foundation, the hotels, the change you're creating, this is what I should have seen in you. This is what I should have nurtured. Maybe," Marcus allowed, "or maybe I needed the doubt to build the drive. I don't know, but I do know this. There are kids right now sitting in classrooms being told they can't, being limited by someone else's lack of imagination. And that's why this foundation exists. To tell them, yes, you can. To show them examples. To open doors. Subscribe if you believe every child deserves someone who sees their potential, because that's what changes everything." Later, Marcus took the stage to give his keynote address. The ballroom fell silent. "5 years ago," he began, "I was thrown out of a hotel lobby for looking like I didn't belong. Tonight, I'm standing in that same hotel in front of 600 people who believe in a different kind of hospitality, a different kind of world." He gestured around the room. "Every person in this room is part of that world building. Our scholarship recipients who are proving that talent and drive exist everywhere, not just in privileged zip codes. Our donors who are putting money behind the belief that inclusion isn't charity, it's investment. Our industry partners who are learning that doing the right thing and doing good business aren't mutually exclusive." He pulled up a slide showing the foundations. Impact over 5 years. 847 scholarships awarded, 12,000 people trained through community programs, 73% job placement rate in hospitality sector, $42 million in small business loans to minority hotel owners, 156 hotels implementing Celestial's inclusion model. "But numbers don't tell the whole story," Marcus continued. "So I want to introduce you to someone who does." A young woman walked onto the stage, early 20s, confident, wearing a Celestial management uniform. "This is Destiny Rodriguez," Marcus said. 5 years ago, she was aging out of foster care with nowhere to go and no prospects. Today, she's the youngest property manager in Celestial history, running our Newark location. Destiny took the microphone, her voice strong and clear. "Mr. Thorne gave me more than a job. He gave me proof that I mattered, that my background didn't define my future, that someone who looked like me, came from where I came from, could lead." She looked at Marcus. "I have 15 kids in foster care right now interning at my property, learning hospitality, building skills, seeing possibilities. Because if I can do it, they can too." The room erupted in applause. When it quieted, Marcus spoke again, his voice thick with emotion. "My mother died believing she'd spent her life being invisible. She never got to see this, the foundation, the change, the ripple effects of refusing to accept that some people don't matter." He paused, composing himself. "But I see it. Every scholarship recipient, every training program graduate, every hotel that implements inclusive practices, every child who gets told, 'Yes, you can,' instead of 'No, you can't.'" He looked directly into the cameras streaming the event. Dorothy Thorne cleaned hotel rooms for 23 years. She was seen as invisible by the people she served. But she raised a son who built hotels where no one has to be invisible, who created a foundation that ensures her name, her legacy, is attached to opportunity instead of erasure. His voice broke slightly. "Mama, if you can see this, we did it. We took the pain and built something beautiful. We took the invisibility and made it impossible to ignore. We took your sacrifice and turned it into legacy." The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Later, as guests mingled and the gala wound down, Marcus found himself back at that window overlooking Manhattan. The same view he'd had the night everything changed. Kaisha, his director of training, approached with a tablet. "Boss, you need to see this. It's trending worldwide." She showed him social media clips from his speech going viral. But it wasn't just the usual shares. It was stories. Thousands of people posting their own experiences of being made to feel invisible, of being told they couldn't, of working jobs where they were treated as less than human. And underneath almost every post, "Thank you, Marcus Thorne. Thank you, Dorothy Thorne. Thank you for showing us that change is possible. You did something extraordinary," Kaisha said softly. "You turned personal pain into systemic change. That's rare." "It's not finished," Marcus replied. "There are still hotels where people are treated as unwelcome. Still industries built on exclusion. Still children being told they don't belong. But there are fewer than there were 5 years ago. And 5 years from now, there will be even fewer." She smiled. "That's how you change the world, not all at once, but steadily, stubbornly, refusing to accept that things can't be different." After she left, Marcus stood alone with his reflection, thinking about the journey. From that scared kid in Detroit to the man standing in a ballroom named after his mother. From being thrown out of a lobby to owning the hotel. From proving he belonged to building spaces where everyone belonged. His phone buzzed one last time. Text from an unknown number. "Mr. Thorne, my name is Marcus. I'm 8 years old. My teacher said I should write to you because she says you're proof that boys like me can do anything. I want to build hotels too when I grow up. Big ones where everyone is nice. Will you teach me?" Marcus read it 3 times, his eyes burning. He typed back, "Asterisk Marcus, I'm going to teach you something even better than how to build hotels. I'm going to teach you why we build them. And yes, boys like you can do anything. Don't let anyone tell you different. Stay excellent. Stay curious. Stay kind. And when you're ready, there's a place for you at Celestial. P.S. Tell your teacher she's doing it right." Asterisk. He sent the message and stood there, looking out at the city that had tried to break him and ultimately made him, and felt something settle in his chest. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of purpose. He'd gone so high that they needed telescopes to see him. But more importantly, he'd built ladders so others could climb too. And in the end, that was the only legacy that mattered. Marcus Thorne, son of Dorothy Thorne, CEO of Celestial Hotels, founder of the Dorothy Thorne Foundation, walked back into the gala where his family, his team, his community waited, where he belonged, where everyone belonged. Finally, this is the story of how one night of humiliation became a catalyst for industry-wide transformation. How one black CEO decided that being quiet wasn't enough. How a mother's invisible labor became a son's visible legacy. The Grand Celestial still stands in Manhattan. The lobby still gleams. But now, everyone who walks through those doors, regardless of what they're wearing, where they're from, or what they look like, is seen. Because Marcus Thorne learned what his mother always knew, that the most revolutionary act is treating people like they matter. All of them. Every single one.